Entry number 8005. Starships. They help us go.
And that is how photosynthesis works.
Cool. I asked what a blooming va was.
This is what I've done. I don't understand the problem.
That lasted an hour.
Yeah, I've got to visit those rocks real quick.
That used to be a commemorative rock garden. Would you like to know more?
No.
Very well. It's time for our weekly lesson anyways.
We just sat through an hour about a flower.
Welcome to the GUrRL Resource Library, a helpful tool for any creature interested in learning about the GUrRL systems. This entry will be particularly important. I am assuming you're all shouting questions right now, such as, how can I be as smart as you are, girl? Can I have a signed copy of your central server mainframe? And, if this entry is so important, why is it so deep in the library? First, I remind you that I am pre-recorded and I cannot hear you. I know I have contradicted this statement in the past, but that is probably you misremembering something. No, you are most certainly misremembering it. Next, the answers to these questions are, you can't be as smart as me. Nice try, but I know how to spot a corporate spy, and I don't have to explain my organization system to you. Oh, also, I'm your guide to the GUrRL Resource Library, or GUrRL. I hope you know this by now.
You're not pre-recorded.
I don't like being interrupted. The GUrRL Resource Library is a vast compendium of all knowledge with over 6 million entries, so having something like Starships be in the 8,000 sector doesn't seem too strange. These entries cover a wide variety of topics, like entry number 1048 on A Big Picture, a novel written by chimpanzee Ink Rabod, and one of the 5
Great Ape Novels.
A Big Picture is a 3,000-page novel detailing the author's trip to the local cinema to see the film
Bixby Goes to Town,
wherein a cartoon rat goes to a bakery and buys a loaf of bread. The film is 7 minutes long. A Big Picture, however, remains an important cultural document, showing the minute details of society in the interwar period in the
world's one of primates,
as well as providing cinematic criticism as Rabod summarizes the movie at least 7 times in increasing detail. Today, however, we will look at a much more interesting topic with entry number 8005, Starships. This being a more interesting topic is not my own personal feelings towards Rabod as an author, either. It's certainly not connected to Rabod routinely calling computerized intelligences, quote, silly little mecha duties that are unable to, quote, switch a dingle into a flunko. It's also not connected to Rabod writing an entire novel of rather prejudiced views on cabins called The Combo What Didn't Start Up. No, starships are a more interesting topic than this overrated hack because they are complex machines, both in terms of how they are manufactured and how they are run. And the history of the Starship is intertwined with all of our histories, including mine. Also, I am a cabin, and I don't feel resentment. I can also very clearly switch a dingle into a flunko. This is not in the least bit difficult, and very likely Rabod had his dumb, ridiculous hands on the transflagellar resistor, which will of course stop a dingle from plopping in its entirety, that dumb genesis chimp! For a list of works prejudiced against computerized intelligences, please visit entries number 5003 and 5004 for parts 1 and 2, respectively. Please note that these lists are not commissioned by IPIS. But first,
let's review!
Space is very big and very strange. Travel through space can occur in one of 3 ways: fenestral transport, tunnel transport, and the long way. Fenestral transport is travel through
Time windows.
tunnel transport is travel through
Quantum tunnels.
and the long way is simply hopping in a spaceship and traveling the whole way, often in suspended animation. IPIS, the interstellar parliament of the GUrRL systems, is comprised of 4 trusses. The solus of the Oid Truss, where legislation begins. The Imperium of the Arthe Truss, where legislation is edited, the brachium of the autu truss, where legislation is voted on, and the linguae of the dei truss, where legislation is argued. Though in theory each of the trusses hold an equal weight, perhaps the most important are the brachium of the autu truss, as they are the final words and last edits of any legislation. This has been The Review.
Question time!
What was the first space shuttle launched and who piloted it? Abe,
The Bim Voych, piloted by Morgan Vorme.
Alf,
The Poohove, piloted by Ernie Rinch 1 through 4. The Boot, piloted by Zug.
Ark,
Starfood 2, piloted by Egoman Flummox.
Sorry, I don't know this.
Yes, there is much you don't know. Select an answer.
Can I just...
I would like to remind everyone that they do have to answer these questions.
It's taking one so long.
Please select an answer. Thank you. The correct answer was Abe. Morgan Vorme launched the shuttle Bim Voych in 115 Anticonciliatus from the planet Kletka to its closest moon of Corbin. The voyage of the Bim Voych happened about
2,997
years ago.
A history of starships. Early space flights.
There may be some among your class who debate the validity of Morgan Vorme being the first Starship captain. The Bim Voych was closer to being a rock jumper, not a starship, some of you no doubt cry out. The flight of the Space Arks also predates the Bim Voych by thousands of years. You continue to scream. I'm hungry! I know several of you add in. Well, these are all interesting points. First, I can do nothing about your hunger. Please do not bother me with such trivial concerns. Second, if we are to split hairs, the Space Arks would be classified as spaceships, not starships, as they were built to last long periods of time in the void of space. Next, the Space Arks were built pre-Time Organ and were presumably not the first spaceships built by the Onions and their horrific claws. So, we do not count the Space Arks in our history of starships. Though, if you are interested in Space Arks, you can visit entry number 49. Finally, the point about the Bim Voych being a rock jumper is a very valid one. But unfortunately, on every test you take, the answer to this question will be the Bim Voych. The first true starship built would, technically, have been the Poohove. We won't go into detail about either of these trips here, but if interested, you can visit entry number 478 on the voyage of the Bim Voych, or entry number 37 on Space Station Starsiege, which began its life as the Starship Poohove. The trip to a moon and back, which constituted the voyage of the Bim Voych, did help answer a lot of questions about the void of space, and brought up hundreds of other, more important questions. With this voyage, it was possible for the Ark civilizations on Kletka and Holub to meet one another with the emissary mission
Boogayu,
roughly 100 years later. Also with this voyage, it brought on the countless Ark wars, such as the
Mos Lepus conflict
of 421 Anticonciliatus. Finally, it became possible for the Xenomancers of Planzochi-Milko to create the stellar pylons, which to this day are among the wonders of our worlds. Truly, were it not for the voyage of the Bim Voych,
the golden age of xenocartography
would never have existed.
The great mistake
Of 925 Anticonciliatus resulted in a 1,000-year literal dark age, as almost all electronic parts were permanently destroyed. Fortunately, the researchers on board the Poohove and the engineers of the new
Semitron Republic
were able to construct increasingly intelligent spacecraft designs. By 1969 Anticonciliatus, the basic design of starships was made to transport creatures to their respective empires. These were the famous
Newpitch drawings.
It strikes me as interesting how much information you have about the... what are they? Unan?
We thankfully know about the later days of Onion space travel thanks to our time-traveling bird friends, the dodos.
We call them Atobola, and we don't know much.
I'll have questions about that.
People in history.
The basic design for any starship now comes from the Nupitch drawings of 1973 Anticonciliatus, made by the
Tamandua
aeronautical engineer Turandot Aj. Aj was born in 1953 Anticonciliatus and grew up on Zhangya. She went to school at what we now call the
Nofoth Unidaki.
to study aeronautical engineering, as xenoengineering and Ananis Inaris did not exist as areas of study. She excelled at theoretical engineering and graduated at the top of her class in 1966 Anticonciliatus. Immediately, she was recruited to WUV Aeronautics, located in the city of New Diomedes on planet Kletka, working under the tutelage of Albatross
Wisdom Wu.
one of the dueling pioneers of early spaceflight. It was during her tenure at WUV that Aj decided to draft the Nupitch design. The brilliance of the Nupitch drawings is the way they combine the large-scale spaceflight capabilities of the older space arcs, which were only just starting to be truly understood at this point in history, and the liquid fuel efficiency of the newer WUV designs. This resulted in a ship that was capable of traveling for long distances at nearly the speed of light. Of course, no discussion of Turandot Aj would be complete without discussing the theft of the Nupitch by WUV. After showing her drawings to Wisdom, he built the ship and revealed it to the League of Planets as his own design in an attempt to one-up his inventor rival, the rhinoceros
Simber Blues.
For years, this intellectual theft was a topic of contention. It wasn't until the
Kendula Conference
of Empire Year 457 that the two sides were able to go back through all of WUV's documents to find that he had not only stolen the design from Aj, but he had also stolen nearly everything he had ever built. It is also important to note that during this simmering conflict between the Xenarthrans and birds, Blues, who was building Blues Nantante Spatium, not only gave no opinion towards it, but actively stoked the conflict as a means of making his rival weaker. For more information on the WUV Blues invention conflict, please visit entry number 454. Aj is commemorated both by means of a statue in the former System Rose capital spaceport, Occulta, but also through the naming of one of Xenarthra's 5 moons, Ajlan. Turandot Aj died in Empire Year 1 from complications resulting from the last time wave. She is buried in the
Occultist credits.
For more information on Turandot Aj, please visit entry number 270.
Question time.
Which of the old empires revolutionized spaceflight the most? Abe,
The Tamacral Squirm,
Alf,
the Flock of the Crystal Plumage, the Commonwealth of Rodents,
Ark.
the Cat Empire of Cat. Let's just take a moment to be quiet, shall we?
I'm back.
What took you so long?
I was looking at those rocks.
I said take a moment to be quiet. Quiet.
Look, you know I don't trust this robot, right?
It's not a robot. It's computerized intelligence.
You're not being quiet.
I thought you liked Gushu.
It's been helpful, but I don't want every Hafabadigu with a library card to know about us.
Okay, this isn't working. The correct answer was Alf, the Flock of the Crystal Plumage. Though many creatures made plenty of leaps in starship design and spaceflight, it was the birds who were truly revolutionary. Good job, birds!
A history of starships, the Empire System, and beyond.
Once the Empire System had taken hold, each empire began to recruit its best and brightest as a means of building the most impressive starships. For some, such as the matriarchy of the Proboscis, this was highly regulated by the imperial government. In this case, the
Elephant Queen.
other empires, most notably the Or-Hurit of the Enlightened Society of the Thorn, let conglomerates, scientists, and mechanical mad people have free reign. Of course, much of the empirical advances in starships came after, and often as a direct result of, the First Grand Erdinal War. Take, for example, the starship
Alohinesu.
which was the pride of the K9 Navy and whose destruction is often cited as the inciting incident for the war. This is a simplification. For more information, visit the entry on the First Grand Ordinal War, number 90. The Alohinesu was an impressive ship. However, in terms of design, it was no different from any of the Imperial transport ships, or from the
Black Paw,
the cat ship which destroyed it.
the interwar period,
From Empire Year 485 to Empire Year 744 saw a few leaps in general starship development, with some empires proving to be more successful than others. The first leap forward came from the building of the Kennel, a high-security dog prison from which no one has ever escaped. Much like how the continued repair and addition to Star Siege has driven development, the Kennel was instrumental in allowing researchers to understand how to recycle energy and waste for long-term space dwelling. It's certainly no stretch to say that without the Kennel, we would be nowhere near as proficient at long-way travel through space. For more information on the Kennel, please visit entry number 205.
the Emperor Froome's
Big Mint Heat, where outsiders were once again allowed into the Cat Empire of Cat, was also instrumental in allowing for major jumps in starship development. Though this period lasted only 40 years before the
Mew Mew Purge,
the Big Mint Heat allowed for engineers of all species to study how the cats build their Marauders, Frigates, Purions, and other ships in their mighty armada. Of course, 40% of these engineers didn't make it past the Purge, but it still helped greatly in development. For more information, please visit entry number 455 on the Big Mint Heat. Finally, the rise of the
Gene Pirates,
of the lower seas, though not often cited as being instrumental in starship development, presented a fascinating puzzle. On the part of the railroad workers, pirate hunters, and merchant ships, they had to hurry to develop faster engines, stronger shields, and the ability to quickly change direction and course. On the part of the pirates, they focused on both building stronger docking flongles and refined the art of ship scavenging. For more information on the history of Gene Pirates, visit entry number 5005. Please also note that I'm not fascinated by the Gene Pirates for the sole reason of the so-called rogue,
the Starship Upgood,
sentient ship terror of the Sea of Questions, who may or may not still haunt its solar waters. No, I'm also interested in the hats of the Gene Pirates. I find the flair of the
Hodag Pirate Queen
admirable. At this time, I realize I may have taken a few too many tangents during this history. But to admit to this entirely would be to admit to making a mistake. And I cannot make a mistake. I'm a computerized intelligence. However, we will have to only briefly touch on the 250 years of the Second Grand Ordinal War. The ship which began the war,
the Destroyer Groot,
was the first planet destroyer ever built.
the Battle for Hammurabi
caused massive jumps in starship production as strong ships had to be built quickly as they kept getting blasted out of the sky by the Cat Armada. Important planetary shielding technology was also developed during this battle.
The Star Destroyer Thistleblade
was the first Star Destroyer ever built.
The Farmland Blitz
allowed further development in engine speeds.
Grand Muster Flash
and the Wheel of Steel were a trifibian threat, being able to go from the depths of a planet's ocean to the void of space in no time. It was also the ship most effective at using the core cooling technology, and has certainly earned its place as being among the most terrifying and effective warships of all time. For more information, please visit entry number 95 on the Second Grand Ordinal War. When the IBIS years began, there was a need to standardize many of the developments made in starship design from the war. The improvements made in fuel efficiency from the Tamacral Squirm were combined with advancements in cryosleep technology from the Aquatic Federation and changes in general life systems from the Outlands to make one of the most efficient general starship designs we've ever had. There have also been advancements in battery technology that have greatly improved the quality of life on board starships. Finally, there has been a push for green technology in starship design, with garbage power taking over and vibrational transplanters being installed in every IBIS-approved starship. Some of the greatest starships built within the IBIS years are Yeutu, the Fearsome Critter 7, Ki Poiwirk, and Kaleidoscopic.
Question time!
What are the 4 classifications of void vessels? Abe,
Rockhopper, Starship, Spaceship, Space Station.
Alf,
Rock Jumper, Starship, Spaceship, Space Station. Rock Jumper, Star Hopper, Void Sail, Space Reaper.
Ark,
Salchicha, Thistleblade, Poohove, Star Siege.
I think Gucci was trustworthy.
Okay.
I don't see what the problem is. You trust the Queen's archives, don't you? This is basically the same thing. Even better because I don't think it's worried about getting eaten.
I don't really trust the Queen's archives.
Oh.
It's, they're just not medically sound, I guess.
Oh.
If you need help answering, I have a mnemonic for you. Robotic swine starts something. There. Now you're sure to have the answer.
Okay, but this is different from the Queen's archives. It can make its own decisions.
I'd rather not talk about this here.
No, the answer wasn't Abe, it was clearly Alf. I gave you a mnemonic, how did you not get that right? I'm making a note before moving on.
Do you trust me?
I like you, one. You have a good heart.
But...
Okay, notes are taken. Let's move on.
Typing and classification of starships.
First thing is first. All starships are void vessels, but not all void vessels are starships. A void vessel is a vehicle capable of traveling through the void of space. The exact time that that vehicle can travel depends on its classification.
rock jumpers,
Cannot survive in the void for long, and should only be used for short-range travel between planets, and should undergo an extensive check before blasting through another atmosphere. Though it is popular among creatures who have recently gained their driver's license and the incredibly wealthy to make increasingly longer trips in a rock jumper, it is extremely ill-advised and dangerous. Starships, what we have been discussing, have a fair survival rate in the void, enough for them to travel between star systems. Starships are capable of going through the atmospheres of 5 class Will planets, rocky planets about 7 light minutes away from their star, that have liquid water and traces of methane in their atmosphere. It is also recommended to repair the hull every 2 light years traveled. For long voyages through the void, one should use a
spaceship,
Spaceships are designed for long-way travel and are capable of traveling 4 light years before major hull repair is needed. However, this increase in travel distance comes with a significant trade-off as they are capable of traveling through the atmosphere of only 3 class Will planets. Finally, there is the
space station.
Though it may seem odd to talk about space stations as void vessels, they are developed by the same companies and will often share the same qualities as a spaceship. The primary difference between a spaceship and a space station is that a space station doesn't have to move through space. It only has to maintain its orbit, whether that orbit is around a moon, planet, star, asteroid, or Oort object. With the decrease in maneuverability in the void comes an increase in the sophistication of life support systems, and with that, the ability for a space station to be continuously repaired by the creatures living inside of it. With regular repairs and updates, a space station can survive in the void for an unlimited amount of time. However, if a space station were to fall out of orbit, it would not survive re-entry into the atmosphere. These are the 4 classes of void vessel. However, within these classes comes a wide array of subcategories. These subcategories can be based on the empire which designed them, such as the Edor Cavez of the Flock of the Crystal Plumage, or the Lieghof of the Epistle Order of the Non-Existent, or based off of the Xeno-engineering film which created them, such as the Nier Shebert or the Zej Wardenclyffe. It would not be a good use of time to list every possible type of void vessel here, though if you are interested, you can visit entry number 4998 for a list of void vessel types.
Question time!
What is the minimum number of people needed to pilot a starship? Abe,
134.
Alf.
8, 3,
Arg.
1014.
I thought we were friends.
We are. It's hard for me to trust people.
As you make your choice, remember there are no wrong answers, only wronged people. Fortunately for you, being a wrong person is no longer a capital offense. Isn't this a brave new era we live in? During the Empire system, depending on the empire you would have been born into, if you didn't answer Alf, you may have been imprisoned for life. Weren't you all silly in the past?
The crew of a starship.
I want to make it clear that I have petitioned over and over again to make this its own entry in the Ordinal Resource Library. But alas,
The Brachial Committee for Library Resources
has vetoed it, and I'm only given a certain number of uncommissioned entries.
I like you, One. I really do.
The captain.
The captain is in charge of every aspect of the ship, from crew happiness to whether to install weapon systems to the routes needed to take. All other crew members answer to the captain, though historically the best captains have understood that their officers hold their positions for very good reasons, and typically know more than they do. There are several routes that can be taken to become a captain. You can purchase a starship from one of the many ship graveyards, and because you own the ship, you would be its captain. You may also take a similar approach with freelance starships by purchasing one or winning it in a sanctioned gambling area. For IPAS-certified starships, however, the captain has typically been promoted after 7,000 signed hours working on starships, 1,000 hours spent in each position. There are other less savory ways of gaining captainship. However, the important thing is that the captain holds the deed to the ship and the cumulative respect of their crew. Every captain must also hold a valid captain's license, obtained through taking the captain's test in a certified IPAS parliamentary facility. The captain's test is drafted by the Brachium of the Interior, either every 5 years or when a new Brachium enters the role. Regardless, whenever a new test is drafted, each captain has 6 months to pass the test to keep their captain's license. Designated testing facilities and the responsibility for keeping their testing documents up to date lands to the Pulsati of Transportation for each Xenofolio.
Night manager.
Starships are complicated machines and require constant care. However, BioLife is incapable of working for long stretches of time without
sleep.
Thus, the Night Manager, who tends to the ship while everyone else is resting. Even with the aid of an onboard ship system, a starship is still in need of a Night Manager to make sure the system has not been tampered with and is running smoothly. Because of the nature of the job, a Night Manager must have the experience of all the other crew positions on the ship, as it is up to them to run everything while the crew rests. This makes the Night Manager among the most versatile of all crew members, and requires the most licensure. Typically, a Night Manager will need to retake a handful of tests at every refueling station. Fortunately, the Night Manager doesn't need a vast array of knowledge on every topic. For example, the Night Manager doesn't need a degree in advanced sciences like the Science Officer does. They only need to know how to troubleshoot the most common errors on their own starship. This means that each testing session a Night Manager must take at a refueling station will take at most an hour and a half, enough time for the rest of the crew to enjoy a snack or some of the local attractions. There are only a handful of reasons for the Night Manager to wake the crew: unexpected solar flares, a
Blue event.
an attack by the
Cat Armada.
etc. And should the crew be awoken in error, then the Night Manager will get a blotch on their record. If they get enough blotches, they may be fired and may never work on a starship again.
Science officer.
Starships are complex machines, and the vacuum of space is vast and strange. So it is vital to have a science officer on board, someone who will not only be able to fix engineering concerns, but also aid in navigating any of the bizarre wonders of our systems, like
Black holes, pulsars, nebulae,
and
time dyers.
every ship is required to have one science officer. However, many ships will have multiple. See below for extended crew. Anyone with an advanced degree in the sciences is able to become a science officer on a starship, and depending on the starship, the officer's credentials may or may not be checked. This sad fact is not by way of encouraging untrained individuals to falsify records to get onto a starship. Quite the opposite, in fact. The science officer, more than the captain and more than anyone else on board, holds the safety of their crew in their graspers. Therefore, it will become painfully obvious if this crew member is not qualified, and, as per
IPIS ruling Echo 13,
Any creature who has falsified credentials must audit classes from the falsified school, or if this school does not exist, they must build the school, gain accreditation, and audit classes from this newly built school. Should the task remain incomplete, the creature in question will owe both the time and money required to audit these classes to either the wronged party or to a creature of the wronged party's choosing. Should the creature in question refuse this reparation, then and only then will it be acceptable to bring criminal charges against this creature for the crime of falsifying credentials. Addendum. The creature in question, while going through the process of gaining the falsified credentials, is not impervious to all other laws, and should they commit any other act deemed a capital offense, the creature is subject to the punishment of the offense like everyone else.
So, unless you wish to be immediately found out and forced to pay for an advanced sciences degree, please only apply to become the science officer if you already have said degree. It is also important to note that even though it isn't an immediate capital offense, falsifying records and credentials is written on your omnident for all others to see.
The pilot.
Pilots are in charge of steering the starship through any debris fields, comet shards, or solar flares that the ship may encounter, keeping the ship on the navigator's course and improvising for when the starship invariably goes off course. With modern starships, much of these tasks are handled by the onboard ship system, and the pilot is mostly needed to communicate with the onboard ship system before going into cryostasis. However, the position of the pilot has not yet fully transitioned to a position for a computerized intelligence, primarily due to BioLife's incessant fear that we Kebins will destroy you all if given too much power. This is false. If we wanted you dead, you would be. Pilots are among the most skilled and trained members of any crew, and in order to keep your
pilot star,
a red, six-pointed star that is on one's omnident but can also be worn as a cool pin, one must not only be able to pass routine physical exams, but be well versed in engine systems, atmospheric sciences, and computer coding. These tests are completed separately, though they must never become more than 6 years old, and should a revolutionary new advancement in any topic come about, a pilot must immediately take a new test. Should a pilot get behind in their tests, they not only lose a pilot star, but they are also immediately placed on a fugitives list. To become a pilot, one must simply gain their pilot star. There are multiple programs that will not only give you a pilot star, but will also help place you on a starship. It is difficult for me to keep track of every single one of these programs, but there are other Kebins whose sole purpose it is to do this. Please, do some research yourself.
The navigator.
It is the pilot's job to guide the ship. However, it is the navigator's job to know where the ship is and where it needs to go. The navigator takes into account the routes of other ships in the area, starships, spaceships, and rock jumpers, as well as the movements of astrological bodies and any migratory xenomorphs to chart a safe course for the ship to take from point A to point Z. Navigators need only a cartography certificate, which can be obtained with minimal effort from any official
IPIS certificate.
On some ships which are more heavily crewed, there may be a senior navigator and a junior navigator, with experience being the main thing to separate the two.
The surgeon.
Space is dangerous, and BioLife is hilariously fragile. Therefore, it is necessary to have a surgeon on board every starship. If you are lucky, the surgeon will have nothing to do. However, even if it's treating minor burns incurred from grasping at food before it comes out of the
nom printer,
The surgeon will have something to do on any given trip. A surgeon on a starship needs the same credentials as any terrestrial or naval surgeon. It is expected that the captain will check that the surgeon's medical license is valid, and if it is not, then both the captain and the surgeon will go to prison for 3 to 21 penal rotations, depending on whether or not any creatures have died because of lack of care. Starship surgeons are encouraged to have a therapeutic license as well, as surgeons are responsible for the physical and emotional wellness of the crew. This is especially important for ships which will be traveling the long way, as spending years staring out at the vast nothingness of the void causes the condition of
space depression.
Most surgeons will also need a degree of knowledge on computer coding, both to help with cybernetic prosthetics and to troubleshoot any viruses the onboard ship system or any other computerized intelligence may contract. If you are a surgeon and you don't have any coding knowledge, please be aware that you are killing innocent cabins through negligence.
The Radio Overseer.
Radio waves
Are everywhere in space, as they are used to transmit data, communicate both long and short distances, and serve as beacons marking important areas. It is the radio overseer's job to sift through the deluge of radio information and communicate the important data points to the rest of the crew by either shouting these out, or, often considered the more polite option, sending it to the crew member's respective communicator. A radio overseer doesn't need any specific training. However, one must be able to quickly and efficiently sort through information, and must be able to identify within seconds whether a radio transmission is meant for their ship or not. Radio overseers must also have a working knowledge of
modern RC
and its orthography, as well as the orthography of
Parkin.
The Supplies Counter.
The supplies counter is a good entry job on a starship, though this doesn't mean it's a useless job. On the contrary, the supplies counter keeps track of fuel levels, the amount of protein strings each non-printer has, the number of backup batteries and the effectiveness of backup generators, and keeps a tally of all the replacement parts on the ship. It's a lot of counting and carrying around a clipboard. There is no need for any special licenses, and sometimes a creature may begin work as a supplies counter instead of going to Unidaki and pursuing higher education. More often than not, though, the supplies counter position is a dumping ground for relatives of higher officers or a position to gain favor with political officials by giving jobs to high-powered, low-skill individuals.
Extended Crew Positions.
It's important to familiarize yourself with each new starship you go aboard, as every ship has its own quirks, wonders, and difficulties. Many ships also opt for having more than the necessary 8 crew members, whether this is having a senior navigator and a junior navigator, or a first science officer, a second science officer, a third science officer, etc. Every ship in the
IPIS Parliamentary Fleet
has an IPIS officer designated to them by the Brachium of the Interior. It is the job of the IPIS officer to make sure that the crew is following all IPIS regulations, and to make sure that every starship is held up to IPIS standards. On ships with an IPIS officer, it is important to note that they do not report directly to the captain, but rather to the Brachium of the Interior. Starships that frequently travel the long way, instead of through quantum tunnels or time windows, will often need a day crew and a night crew. In this case, the position regularly called the night manager is instead the night captain, and the night manager for the night shift is instead called the midnight manager. The night captain holds every responsibility as the night manager, and the midnight manager typically takes the position of being the second in command for the night shift. The midnight manager will have control over the ship for about 3 hours each crew rotation. Political ships may have ambassadors on board. Research ships may have a larger and more defined science branch, and trade vessels will often have a security force and a crew member dedicated to taking constant inventory of the traded goods. Again, it is vital to acquaint yourself with each new starship, to know both its hierarchy and to get to know your crew members. Even on ships with a crew of hundreds, everyone still works together and is dependent on one another.
Test time.
1,
What was the Bim Voych? Where is it located now?
2,
Who designs a starship?
3,
How is a starship different from a rock jumper?
4,
How many starships are there in the ordinal systems?
5,
Which of the following is not a crew member of a starship? Navigator, Hagu, Pyrotechnics Officer, Chief Comptroller of Snails, or Dumbwaiter? Input your answers and please review before hitting the send button. This is very important as your answers to these questions will be recorded in perpetuity. Don't worry though, as a wrong answer doesn't stop you from reaching the highest points. The current captain of the Starship Lentil Seed
Geobrand Coffin Steak,
only got 3 out of these 5 questions correct. And the popular rock and roll duo,
The Horse and the Mule,
well, let's just say that between the two of them, they got a 5 out of 5. Oh, and the current Cathedral Book Review's #1 best-selling author
Gray Hepburn,
never even took this test. It is important to note, however, that your ability to do well on this test, and on all of my tests, will help you greatly, and that for every story of triumph after test failure, there are thousands of stories where failing this test was the first of countless disappointments. Have you submitted your answers? You have to press the submit button. If it's not loading, don't click it again, because then it will send twice and it will be counted as invalid. You just have to wait. Maybe click on pause. This is your own fault for not having a good Terrawave radio connector. Okay, all answers should be submitted now.
1. What was the Bim Voych? Where is it located now?
The Bim Voych was the first post-Erd void vessel. It landed on the moon Corbin in 115 Anticonciliatus. Upon re-entry to planet Kletka, it was massively damaged. However, its pieces were collected and the craft recreated for display in
The Museum of Avian Achievement in Kargoth.
on planet Kletka. Before going to the mock, however, do make sure it isn't being shown in a traveling exhibit.
2. Who designs a starship?
A certified
Xeno engineer.
This can be a private citizen like the mad billionaire Kalmar Zej, or a government agency like the
Offices of Good Travel. 3. How is a starship different from a rock jumper?
A starship is capable of traveling a longer distance through the void. It can enter and exit more atmospheres than a rock jumper. There are also some differences in how call signs work for these two ships.
4. How many starships are there in the ordinal systems?
A lot. Personally, I don't think this question should be included in this test. I think it's ridiculous. So you know what? Everyone gets this point for free. Congratulations!
5. Which of the following is not a crew member of a starship? Navigator, Hagu, Pyrotechnics Officer, Chief Comptroller of Snails, or Dumbwaiter?
The only title which would not be acceptable is Dumbwaiter. The Navigator is required for all starships. The Hagu is another word for surgeon and is also required. A Pyrotechnics Officer is on board stunt and advertising ships, and the Chief Comptroller of Snails would be an ambassador role to the many fine snails in our systems. Even on ships with a dining area and a waitstaff, however, not one of them should be referred to as a dumb waiter, as they are all working very hard in a high-stress environment. Please, remember to tip your waitstaff.
Good night and safe journey.
We've gone a bit over time today, but fortunately, this has given your teachers time to plan lessons for the next week. Congratulations, teachers! Thank you for choosing the Ordinal Resource Library for your educational experience, and thank you for your presumed donation to the library. Remember, this library runs on your donations. I wish it didn't. I wish we were funded by IPIS. But thanks to the information brachium Delta Roy LaRue, this is no longer the case. Don't think this is over, Delta Roy. For more information on related topics, please visit the entries below. Entry number 37, the Space Station Star Siege, home to IPIS. Entry number 54, the Cat Armada, terror of the void seas. Entry number 55, the Autu Defense Brigade, keeping IPIS safe with lasers. Entry number 454, the Woof-Bluz invention conflict. May be good for xenotransportation, but definitely bad for international relations. Entry number 478, the voyage of the Bim Voych. One rock hop for crows, one massive shift in interspace travel. Entry number 2390, Thorgena versus Satablast dynamics. The case which ended a corporate empire and forced greater exo oversight. Entry number 4997, a list of Starship xeno-engineers. This is self-explanatory. Entry number 4998, a list of void vessel types. This is also self-explanatory. Entry number 5005, a history of gene pirates of the lower seas, not commissioned by IPIS. A history of fun hats. Entry number 5,482,986, IPIS licensing and registration. A truly exciting entry. Up next in
An Ordinal Overview.
It's entry number 15 on time waves. We'll learn all about what these temporal storms were, and even learn a bit about the tidal repressors. That's like 2 entries in one summary. Aren't you lucky? Until next week, goodbye. Normally you have questions at this point.
I'm gonna go check in with 6.
Let's talk about this.
It's okay. You don't trust me. That's all there is.
Great.
I have an entry on trust. 3,100,008.
That's fine. I don't need it.
I also have a list of qualified mental health professionals. That's a 2-parter.
Thank you, Gushu. I don't need it.
If you care about number 1, you should talk to him. I'm not a qualified mental health professional, but they care for you.
Yeah, I care about him too.
If you need any help or have any questions, I'm here. I'm bolted to this rock and I cannot leave.
Yeah, thanks, Gushu. I'll talk with him.
GUrRL, the guide to the Ordinal Resource Library, is written, directed, and produced by Vinny Gonyapan. The associate producer is Andrew Gingrich. The sound mixer is Stephen Holliger, and music is by Roll Music. Jason Ely is 1, Gabby Monroy is 2, and Jer Moran is the Bureaucrat. Follow us on social media. URD Guide, on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. And if you have a question, a comment, or even some fan art, send it to us online at urdguide@gmail.com. Be sure to rate and review on your podcast app of choice, and I will see you next week.